The edge of the unknown. Dran Velk adjusted his feathers, ruffling them in agitation as he examined the galactic map before him. The holographic projection flickered with shifting star clusters, hyperlane routes, and planetary designations, an intricate tapestry of known space. Every species that had ever ventured into the void had contributed to this grand chart, a testament to millennia of exploration. And yet, at the edge of human territory, the map simply stopped. Velk was no stranger to gaps in the record. Some regions remained unexplored due to dangerous anomalies or bureaucratic neglect. But this was different. The demarcation was clear and absolute, as though an invisible hand had drawn a line no one dared to cross. Master Velk. Jora Mrix's voice interrupted his thoughts. His apprentice, a wiry reptilian with mottled green scales, leaned over the display, tilting his head in curiosity. Why does every known map end a human space? Surely someone has explored beyond. Velk's beak clicked thoughtfully. An old question, Jora, one that no one seems eager to answer. Jora's amber eyes gleamed with youthful defiance. Then we should ask. Velk let out a low, warbling sigh. His apprentice was brilliant, but reckless. The Zereth Dominion valued caution and knowledge in equal measure, but Jora's relentless curiosity often led him to dangerous inquiries. Still, Velk had to admit, he had always wondered the same thing. Seeking wisdom, they left the navigation chamber and made their way through the spiraling corridors of the Zereth Grand Archives, a vast library world dedicated to cataloging the history of the galaxy. Here, knowledge was stored in luminous crystalline data nodes, curated by elder scholars who had spent centuries unraveling the past. They approached Elder Kurno, one of the oldest historians among the Zereth. His once vibrant plumage had faded to gray, and his 4 golden eyes regarded them with weary patience. Ah, young minds full of questions, Kurno crooned, his voice carrying the weight of experience. What troubles you? Jora spoke before Velk could respond. Why does the galactic map end a human space? The air in the archive seemed to grow heavier. Kurno's gaze darkened. That is a question wiser beings have chosen not to ask. Velk felt a prickle of unease. Surely, Elder, there is some record. There were records, Kurno interjected sharply. Once. He gestured toward a restricted section of the archive, its towering shelves hidden behind an energy barrier. Many have sought to chart the unknown past human space. None have returned. Those who persist in questioning often disappear. A long silence stretched between them. Jora, ever the foolhardy one, refused to let go. So we simply accept ignorance? Kurno fixed his apprentice with an unblinking stare. Sometimes, young one, ignorance is survival. Velk felt the chill in the elder's voice, an unspoken warning woven into every syllable. He understood what was being implied, but Jora remained unconvinced. Later that night, as they sat in their quarters aboard the starbound Seeker, Jora finally spoke. We should go. Velk glanced at him sharply. Go where? Jora pulled up the galactic map on his personal console, zooming in on the blank expanse beyond human space. Here, we take the Seeker and find out what no one else will say. Velk hesitated. He had spent decades teaching Jora the value of careful study, of measured action. And yet, the mystery gnawed at him, too. What force had halted entire civilizations from expanding beyond that border? Was it some natural cosmic phenomenon? A forgotten war? Or something worse? The weight of Elder Kurno's warning pressed against his mind. But so did the lure of the unknown. Finally, he exhaled and gave a slow nod. We go. And with that, they set course for the edge of the map, toward the silence beyond, the dead zone. The starbound Seeker slipped past the last recorded hyperlane, its engines humming softly in the vast, star-speckled void. Dran Velk watched the holographic map with growing unease as the familiar markings of known space disappeared behind them. Ahead, only emptiness remained. Jora Mrix sat at the controls, his tail flicking with excitement. No navigation markers, no signals, no beacons. It's like this place doesn't even exist. Velk clicked his beak. Perhaps it isn't meant to. For the first several hours, nothing happened. Their scanners picked up nothing beyond stray cosmic radiation and the occasional asteroid. It was the deepest silence Velk had ever encountered in space, an unnatural stillness, as if the universe itself had been muted. Then the sensors beeped. Jora leaned forward. Contact. Dead ahead. Velk's feathers bristled. Another ship? Jora tapped a few commands. No transponder. Looks ancient. The drifting vessel appeared on their main display. It was massive, easily the size of a battlecruiser, its hull covered in scars of long-forgotten battles. The design was unfamiliar, its structure warped and twisted in ways that suggested damage beyond mere weapons fire. No lights flickered within. No distress signals called out. Velk hesitated. Everything in his instincts told him to turn back, but curiosity won out. Bring us alongside. As they maneuvered closer, the scale of the wreck became even more apparent. Whatever had happened to this ship had not been a simple battle. It looked wrong. Parts of the hull were stretched, as if something had melted and reshaped the metal in unnatural ways. Jora's voice was quieter now. Docking protocols engaged. I'm getting power readings inside. Weak, but something still alive in there. Velk took a steadying breath. Let's suit up. They stepped through the docking hatch, entering the derelict vessel. The interior was eerily intact, too intact. Usually, abandoned ships were ravaged by decay or scavengers, but here, everything was frozen in time. Consoles were still lit with dying energy, and personal belongings lay scattered as if their owners had simply vanished mid-action. Velk activated his translator as they reached the command deck. See if you can access the logs. Jora crouched at a terminal, tapping at the dim controls. A static-filled recording played, its voice fragmented and broken. The void is not empty. The sound of heavy breathing, panicked voices overlapping. They let us go. Velk felt his feathers tighten. Who is that? Jora fast-forwarded the file, searching for more. The final entry crackled through the speakers. We were the last. We. A deep, resonant noise filled the recording. Something vast and unrecognizable. And then, silence. Jora yanked his hands away from the console as the ship's lights flickered violently. The temperature dropped. Velk's heart pounded. We're leaving. Now. They sprinted back toward the starbound seeker, slamming the airlock shut behind them. As they undocked, Velk glanced at the derelict ship one last time. He had expected ghosts of the past. Instead, he felt the unmistakable sensation of something watching them. Just before they jumped away, the seeker's sensors detected something behind the ruined vessel. Something moving in the dark. The last witness. The starbound seeker hurtled through the void, silent but for the hum of its engines. Dran Velk's feathers remained stiff, his mind replaying the last moments aboard the derelict ship. The recording, the flickering lights, the overwhelming sense of being watched. Jora Mrix had barely spoken since their escape. He now sat at the sensor station, staring at the display. We're still picking up that signal, he muttered. Velk turned sharply. The one from the wreck? Jora shook his head. No, something else. A transmission from a planetary source. Not human, but old. He brought up the visuals. A barren world orbiting a dying star. It was lifeless by all accounts, yet the signal pulsed steadily from its surface. Velk hesitated. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to flee. But they had come this far. The truth was within reach. Take us in. The forbidden planet. The descent was uneventful, the ship cutting through thin, dust-laden clouds. The planet's surface was a graveyard of ruined cities, monolithic structures of alien design, shattered and scorched as if something had swept across the world, erasing its inhabitants. Who built this place? Jora whispered, awestruck. Velk examined the ruins through the viewport. A civilization lost to time, or to something else. They followed the signal to a lone structure still standing against the decay of centuries, a subterranean complex beneath a mountain. Their landing was rough, dust billowing in thick clouds as the seeker touched down. Armed with scanners and light sources, they entered the facility. The air was stale but breathable. Ancient murals lined the walls, depicting a race of towering, insectoid beings, proud conquerors, their empires stretching across the stars. But as the murals progressed, the imagery changed. The conquerors reached human space. Then nothing. The next carvings were different. The towering figures were gone, replaced by silhouettes. Empty, featureless, standing in silent judgment. Jora swallowed hard. This doesn't feel like a war story. Velk said nothing, leading them deeper into the structure. At the heart of the complex, they found it. The last survivor. A chamber pulsed with faint energy, its machinery long deteriorated but still functioning. In the center stood a towering obsidian structure, a containment unit. Jora approached a control panel, brushing dust away. The signal originates here. Something still active. A deep hum filled the air as the containment unit awakened. The walls trembled. Then a voice, mechanical but ancient. Designation, the Archivist. Final witness of the Vraxis Dominion. Velk stepped forward cautiously. Archivist, what happened here? A pause. Then, the structure's holographic interface flickered to life, displaying a recorded history. The Vraxis had been a warlike empire, expanding relentlessly. When they reached human space, they saw no significant defenses, no vast fleets, no planetary armadas. They assumed an easy victory. They launched an invasion. 3 days later, their empire ceased to exist. Jora stiffened. That's not possible. The Archivist continued. There was no battle. No human ships ever engaged them. Instead, something else responded. A presence that did not speak, did not negotiate. It simply acted. Entire fleets vanished without a trace. Colonized worlds went silent overnight. The Vraxis homeworld gone. Not destroyed. Not conquered. Erased. Velk's breathing slowed. They wiped you out. The Archivist's lights flickered. They let us leave, but they ensured we would never tell. Jora's claws trembled over the console. Who are they? For the first time, the Archivist hesitated. Then, the holographic recording changed, showing a single, final transmission from the moment the Vraxis vanished. A sound filled the chamber. A voice, vast and unknowable, speaking in no language, and yet understood by all. You should not have come. Then silence. The unseen guardians. Velk's feathers lay flat against his skin, an instinctual reaction to deep, unshakable dread. The Archivist's words echoed in his mind. You should not have come. Jora Mrix stood frozen beside him, staring at the holographic display. His scaled hands twitched as if his body wanted to move, to flee, but his mind refused to accept what it had just witnessed. Velk, he whispered, his voice hoarse. We need to leave. Velk nodded. Now, the silent judgment. They turned toward the exit, but the chamber's lights flickered violently. A low vibration rumbled through the walls, like the deep exhale of something vast and unseen. Then the Archivist spoke again. You are not the first to seek answers. The words carried an ominous finality. Velk stopped mid-step. What happened to the others? The Archivist hesitated. Then, all the lights in the facility went dark. A pressure filled the air, pressing against Velk's skull. The same unseen weight he had felt aboard the derelict ship returned, stronger now, closer. Jora gasped, clutching his head. Then the voice came. Not from the Archivist, not from the walls, from everywhere. You were warned. The temperature dropped. Their breath came in sharp, visible wisps. Velk grabbed Jora by the arm. Run. They sprinted through the dark corridors, their footsteps echoing. The air around them thickened, an invisible presence pressing closer with each passing second. Somewhere behind them, the Archivist's voice called out, distorted now, breaking apart. They see you. The chase through the void. They barely made it back to the starbound seeker, slamming the airlock shut behind them. Jora scrambled to the pilot's chair, his claws flying over the controls. Engines online, charging the jump drive. The ship did not move. Velk's stomach twisted. Jora. I know. Jora's fingers trembled. Something's holding us. The viewport darkened, not from any external obstruction, but as if the stars themselves had vanished. A presence loomed just outside the ship. Velk couldn't see it, but he felt it. And then the voice returned. You came without war. That is why you still exist. Jora shuddered. What are you? A long pause. The weight of an unseen gaze bore down upon them. Then the voice whispered, deep and absolute. The answer is not for you. Velk felt something shift. The unseen force released them. The ship's alarms blared as the engines flared back to life. Jumping now, Jora shouted. The starbound seeker surged forward, space bending around them as they fled through hyperspace. The final warning. Only when the stars returned to normal did Velk finally let himself breathe. Jora slumped over the console, his body shaking. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Jora muttered, We shouldn't have gone. Velk exhaled slowly. No, we shouldn't have. They sat in silence for what felt like hours before Velk finally accessed the ship's data logs. He hovered over the files they had collected, the recordings, the archivist's final words, and deleted them. Jora looked up in shock. What are you doing? Velk met his apprentice's gaze. They let us leave, but only because we cannot tell. Jora hesitated, then slowly nodded. As they set course back to known space, Velk cast one last glance at the galactic map. At the border of human territory, the place where the map ended, where the silence began, and he finally understood why no one dared to question it.